Donald Trump and Rupert Murdoch, the conservative media baron, are apparently going through something of a breakup. The latest sign of political divorce came on Rupert Murdoch's Fox News, specifically the Fox and Friends program. The hosts were discussing some polling involving younger conservatives at the weekend's Turning Point USA conference.
Who would you vote for? And look, the majority said Trump. Almost 79% said Trump, and only 19% said Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, you know, that's interesting. Keep in mind, Turning Point, a group of young Republican conservative activists from all across the country. So you got people from all across the country convening in Tampa. I am thinking about that is a little different than a couple of other polls that we've seen over the last couple of weeks. 2 weeks ago in Florida, Blueprint Polling did a poll. DeSantis leads the former president in all age groups.
On social media at 8:19 Eastern time, Donald Trump thundered, "Fox and Friends just really botched my poll numbers, no doubt on purpose. That show has been terrible, gone to the dark side." They quickly quote the big Turning Point poll victory of almost 70 points over the number 2 Republican, and then hammer me with outliers. Over the weekend, Donald Trump got hammered on Rupert Murdoch's Fox News Sunday. The show had Liz Cheney on as a guest. She is the vice co-chair and the senior ranking Republican on the January 6th Congressional Committee.
We had a president who sent a mob that he knew was armed to the Capitol to attack and invade while we were counting electoral votes, delayed the count of those votes. And while the attack was underway, it is unquestionable that he did not tell them to go home for hours. And investigating that attack and what led to it and what we need to do legislatively to make sure it never happens again is our fundamental responsibility.
The pitchforks for Donald Trump on Fox News Sunday followed a remarkable Friday night when Rupert Murdoch's Wall Street Journal and New York Post both published scathing critiques in their editorials of Donald Trump. The New York Post wrote, quote, "As his followers stormed the Capitol calling for the vice president to be hanged, President Donald Trump sat in his private dining room watching TV doing nothing. For 3 hours, 7 minutes, as a matter of principle, as a matter of character, Trump has proven himself unworthy to be this country's chief executive again." Here's the Rupert Murdoch Wall Street Journal editorial. "Mr. Trump has shown not an iota of regret. Characters revealed in a crisis, and Mr. Pence passed his January 6th trial. Mr. Trump utterly failed his." The editorials prompted headlines in several publications, including The Guardian, which headlined, "Is Murdoch tiring of Trump? Mogul's print titles dump the ex-president." In the body of the story, quote, "Observers believe Murdoch, 91, may be tiring of Trump's lie that the 2020 election was stolen, which has both kept Trump in the spotlight and denied him the ceremonial status usually extended to ex-presidents. Murdoch outlets have faced legal repercussions for repeating Trump's lie. A judge in Delaware County recently said Fox Court could be sued by Dominion Voting Systems for broadcasting conspiracy theories related to the 2020 election. Rupert Murdoch and his son Lachlan are named in a $1 billion suit for allegedly acting with actual malice and allowing Fox News to broadcast claims the election was rigged." Amidst the Rupert Murdoch divorce with Donald Trump told the Turning Points USA audience that he, Trump, did such a great job as president that he deserved one of our nation's most esteemed and crucial honors. Watch.
"I wanted to give myself the Congressional Medal of Honor, but they wouldn't let me do it. They wouldn't let me do it. I said, I'm gonna give myself I've always wanted that."
Again, the Congressional Medal of Honor is one of our nation's highest military honors. It is America's most prestigious military decoration that may be awarded to recognize American soldiers, sailors, airmen, guardians, and Coast Guardsmen who have distinguished themselves by acts of valor. That's right, military acts of valor. But maybe Donald Trump somehow thought it's something just like an Emmy. In any case, Donald Trump will certainly deserve some sort of honor if in fact he's able to beat back what's coming to him right now from Rupert Murdoch and the Fox News empire and somehow still win the 2024 Republican presidential nomination. Adrienne Lawrence, how does Donald Trump think that he deserves the Congressional Medal of Honor?
Yeah, I think that's really special to think that, this honor that is given for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity and, the fact that you risk your life going beyond the call of duty, how Donald Trump could ever see himself and his bone spores to be included among that class is beyond me. But it does seem pretty on par for this man who lives in this fanciful world in his mind about how great he is. I really do appreciate that Murdoch is finally pushing back since he has been leading this propaganda mill for several years, particularly in advancing Trump. It would be good to actually maybe do some possible journalism at some point in time, but I think that might be too much of a big ask for Fox News. But at least some of this pushback is something I'm willing to go with. I just hope it goes a bit further and maybe decides to hopefully, tell the truth?
Yeah, I mean, there's some people who say, oh my goodness, look at the great stuff that Fox and Friends or Brett Baer did on Fox News Sunday. And in my view, it's not exactly a profile in courage when this follows both the New York Post and the Wall Street Journal editorial pages delivering their scathing critiques of Donald Trump. It seems to me that the folks at Fox News are simply putting their finger in the air and saying, aha, Rupert Murdoch doesn't like Donald Trump, so we'll get on the bandwagon. But I gotta ask you, Adrian, the question in terms of these lawsuits that Fox News is facing, does it help mitigate at all what Fox News may have to pay out if suddenly they can say, well, look at all the terrible things we've been saying lately about Donald Trump, and we believe that the election was not stolen. Does that change the lawsuit or the way the lawsuit might be perceived?
See, that probably would have been somewhat helpful in terms of an argument at some point in time before these lawsuits were filed. But given that they have already been filed, that they are already several stages of the process in deep, I understand that when it comes to Dominion voting, they are knee deep in discovery at this point. It really doesn't do anything, not at all. Because I think even if you were to present this before a jury and say that X years later, Fox News decided to finally share some facts as it concerns Donald Trump, that's not something that any juror or even judge would find to be in any way mitigating, in part because Fox News has been, again, leading this propaganda mill for some time, getting us in this situation, in this position. And the harm has already been done. It's just a matter of, are they gonna exacerbate it by continue along with the narrative and storylines they've been pushing, or are they going to actually maybe be somewhat socially responsible members of society when it comes to media and dissemination of information?
Yeah, I sort of wonder if Fox News has chosen perhaps the latter, that they want to be perhaps at least welcome back into sort of the media world and just leave it to the Newsmaxes and the OANs, One American News, to sort of go full Trump. The irony in all of this is that we've started seeing when we go out and interview Donald Trump supporters at some of his rallies and some of his events, they started criticizing Fox News literally months ago, saying that the only people at Fox News who are still worth watching are Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson, that Fox News can't be trusted. And when you ask them why, well, they'll say, well, because Fox News is part of the establishment as well, and they're part of the fix. So it seems like Trump supporters have already sort of migrated away from Fox News towards some of these more far-right outlets, even though Fox News continues to get huge numbers. And so I wonder if Donald Trump has sort of baked that into the cake in a sense that for him, there's no harm at this point now in criticizing Fox News, whether it's Fox and Friends, the New York Post, or the Wall Street Journal, or any of other Rupert Murdoch assets, because he knows his audience already doesn't trust them, and Trump has already put the Republican Party in something of a bind, because in order to really appeal now, if you're Ron DeSantis or anybody else, if you want to appeal to the MAGA crowd, you have to buy into the 2020 election lie.
Yep, I definitely think that is the case without a doubt. I also think that Trump is willing to bite the hand that feeds him at any point in time, just because he does have this omnipotent sense and view of himself, and it doesn't seem like he's ever faced actual consequences in life. So to see him lash out at the news outlet that is primarily made him when it comes to this MAGA whole identity, it wouldn't seem smart, especially given how you can see Rupert Murdoch can respond across several platforms. At the same time, we've never known Trump to be anybody smart. So I just really do enjoy this GOP infighting, and I hope it means the destruction of the entire party, but that's just me.
Yeah, one can only hope. Adrian, there are a lot of people out there who are, when we talk about Donald Trump possibly running for president in 2024, and there is some suggestions that have been made that Donald Trump believes that if he can just win the presidential nomination, win the White House, he gets to install his own attorney general, and he puts an immediate halt to whatever Department of Justice investigations of him have been underway for January 6th. I know that the Department of Justice does have a slightly different standard in terms of prosecuting somebody who's running for office as opposed to somebody who's no longer in office. But can you explain to people exactly sort of where that line is in terms of, does it really help Donald Trump with his criminal defense, if that's what he's facing, if he is an active presidential candidate, as opposed to if he is not a presidential candidate and decides to sort of ride out into retirement?
Okay, so generally, there's a lot of concern at DOJ in terms of prosecuting a former president and also prosecuting someone who is potentially running for office unless you have something airtight, and especially given how divisive our nation is. But the thing is that DOJ also swore to uphold the Constitution and the law. So as far as I'm concerned, that should be your guiding light. You should not in any way interject politics or fear of all sorts of ramifications if you were to actually do your job. The point is that it gets done because that's how our system is supposed to work. And so it's really upsetting that there is, to some extent, this unspoken fear / rule, the thought that they don't want, the United States doesn't want to be in a position where it is prosecuting former presidents because we've been involved with so many other nations that have done that with their former world leaders. But when you have someone who has actually committed a crime and it is egregious and it is factual and well supported, you are supposed to prosecute to show that no one is above the law. So as much as the US may see itself in a catch-22, as far as I'm concerned, DOJ needs to catch some courage and actually just do its damn job.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the damn job would also include handing it to a grand jury and letting a grand jury look at all of this. I was struck, and we played the Liz Cheney soundbite. There are a couple of people who have suggested, Republican supporters of Donald Trump in the legal world, who say, look, the fact that Donald Trump did not do what he should have done morally on January 6th, that's still not necessarily a crime. That inaction can't be considered a crime. But there's also the argument that, wait a second, there's so many other steps that he did take in terms of calling for the January 6th rally, for suggesting that maybe the Secret Service should let people in with their weapons, that you can still make the argument that perhaps he was part of a criminal conspiracy to block the activities of the US Congress. How do you analyze this?
Oh, without a doubt. The thing is if he weren't a former president, then he would be prosecuted already without a doubt for conspiracy, because there seems to be enough evidence to show that they took an active step forward into engaging in this coup-like behavior, and that there is plenty evidence such thereof. And so that would show that they are all involved. All you need is more than one person to knock someone for conspiracy. And there's clearly a web of people involved here who knew exactly what would go down on January 6th, the president included.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.